I'm Tom, and I'm one of the senior analysts at the strategy unit. I'm going to briefly run you through the end-of-life code and how to access the project. The reports were created in the R programming language, and the code is now freely available for anyone to go and download from GitHub. If you're familiar with the R programming language, we use the packages from the typeverse, we use R Markdown to generate the reports, and we use a package called Rmd, which allows you to capture the environment that you are working in and make it really easy to reinstall those exact same versions on other machines. So we can ensure that if you try to run this yourself, you'll have the exact same environment that we were working on. The code was built and run on the NCDR data science server using the data in the NCDR data warehouse. And in order to run these reports, you will need to copy this code onto the data science server. Now, very briefly, if you aren't familiar with GitHub, it's an online platform primarily for software developers. And it provides tools for version controlling their software. So what that means is you can write your code, and as you make changes, it will log who made the change, when they made the change, and why. That makes it really easy to kind of go back through and spot when errors crept in, or do some kind of audit to make sure that your code is still working as it once did. And it gives a good history, so you can step through and see how a report came about, like this one. GitHub is a free and open platform for sharing open source projects, so a project like this one is available for anyone in the world to go and download and have a look at how we got to our results. But as of April 2020, you're also able to create private repositories and share them within your team freely. So it's great for working on a project like this that you're not quite yet ready to share with the wider world. It also has some tools for project management and some more advanced things for working with your software and deploying it to servers, which I'm not going to touch on today. It's by far the largest website of its kind in the world, with over 100 million repositories of code, and it's owned by Microsoft as of 2018. The link to go and view our particular project is at the bottom of the screen there. And if you go to that page, you'll see something that looks like this. You'll see in the middle of the page are the files of the code, and at the bottom there's a brief little description of what the project is and how to run it. The important button is in the top right, the big green code button, and we'll come on to that in a second. So if you log on to the NCDR data science server and open RStudio, you'll be able to click on that code button, copy the link, and then create a new project in R. So if you go to New Project, choose Version Control, and then select Git at the next screen, you'll be able to paste in the URL and hit the Create Product button. And that's going to go and download all of our code and set it up ready for you to start using. Now, before running the report for the first time, you need to run these two little steps. The first one, this rmd install, makes sure that you have all of the packages installed in order to run this project. That'll take a few minutes to run, but then it will be set up. The next step is to get the data from the database, and that's just by running that little line there. And that will open up a file and run the code within it, which in turn calls a bunch of other files. That'll go to the database that Justine has set up, and will get all of the data ready for you to run the report in the future. You only need to run those steps the first time. Once they're done, you'll be able to just open up the report. Now, the report is in a file called EOL_report.Rmd, and this is the R Markdown report. that was described at the start. All of the reports for the different areas run off this same one file, and you can control which STP you're interested in looking at on the 7th line just by changing the STP to be the code for the area that you're interested in. Here we're looking at the Black Country in West Birmingham. Once you've chosen the STP that you're interested in, you can press the knit button that's at the top of the screen there, and that's going to open up the entire file, run it from top to bottom, and generate all of the charts and create a Word document which it will open once it's ready. This takes a couple of minutes because it is quite a large file. The Markdown report is going to look very similar to the final output reports that were created. The text is largely the same. There are a few areas where text was manually inserted later to make sure that we had the correct figures for each individual STP and to change some of the summary points and such like that. But you'll see that the report is laid out logically from top to bottom with different section headings so you can navigate quickly and easily through. But where charts are to be inserted, there's first a little code chunk which can be seen here in the lines 316 to 326. And when that's run, it's going to directly show that chart in the report. This is a great way to develop a report like this because as you run through and write the text and develop the code to generate the charts, you're able to quickly and easily see what the final output is going to look like. With the report open in RStudio, you can click this Show Document Outline button as a way to quickly and easily flick through to the different sections in the report. We can also look at these little chunks here and run the code in each of them by clicking the Run Current Chunk button in the top right corner. This first chunk, the setup chunk, is very important because that sets up the environment and loads all of the variables and the data files that we need in order to generate all of the charts. It takes a few seconds to run this chunk, but you'll see all of the data files are then loaded in the environment ready to use. As we scroll through and start looking for the first chunk that generates a chart, we can equally hit that green button and see what the chart it outputs is just below. Now, the big benefit of this being code is that it's really easy to go in and copy and paste some examples that you're interested in, make some different variations. For example, we have this chart here which shows the cause of death versus the location of death. We can copy this out into a new file, and then we can start changing the filters. For instance, we could have a look at this just for Wolverhampton City CCG. We can run that and see the output here. We can also try adding some different filters in here to this. For instance, we could have a look at the deprivation quintile. And we could have a look at just those in the first deprivation quintile. And we could even compare it against the 5th quintile. We can then use the RStudio features of going backwards and forwards between plots and comparing the two different versions. It looks like this is a particularly bad cut because everyone in that quintile and CCG happened to die in hospital. But we'd be really interested to see what interesting variations that you come up with when you start playing about with this data yourself, or what new and exciting charts you create. Thank you very much.